Hello everyone, let's get to work. We're going to be doing some skills that will help you complete your color board for your Project 3. We'll talk about color replacement and cutting out interesting shapes for your fabric swatches and recoloring them. Let's get started. First of all, we have here this picture. I've downloaded the work and I've extracted the files where I can find them. And I've opened them up here in Photoshop, and you can see the title here. It says Baby Blue Eyes Wildflower. We do not need to save this because we're just going to be doing one thing and exporting this to JPEG. Now, what we have been doing all semester long and in the quiz, we've been telling you that we need everything at 300 dpi. For this exercise, we're going to keep our resolution at 72 dpi just to make life easier for all of us. This is the resolution of the internet. It's 75% smaller than a print picture. For electronic purposes, for the internet, for posting on social media, this resolution is fine. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to do an object select and how to use the Hue and Saturation slider in your image drop-down. Image drop-down, adjustments, Hue and Saturation. The shortcut is Control-U. U sounds like the word hue, and that's what we're going to be manipulating today. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this flower here with my object selection tool. If you do a long press here on the fourth icon down, you'll see this icon, object selection tool, and I'm going to drag this marquee box around my object. Now I have a powerful computer, so it happened fairly quickly. If your laptop is not so powerful, it could take some time. It could also crash your computer, so I would make sure you have any programs that you're not using closed. You can figure out what programs you're using by going to the Alt tab if you have a PC or Option tab if you have a Mac. It'll show you all the other windows you have open, and you can close any one of those programs. Now that I have my flower selected here, if I were to go to this image drop down to Hue and Saturation, we get our Hue and Saturation slider here, and you can see we can saturate. That means this changes the intensity of the value of the color that we have selected. I'm going to crank that up to the right. Also the hue here, we can change the hue of our flower to any color. So go ahead and change the color to something that you want to see, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I want to desaturate the surrounding colors here. All I want to do here is show you something. In this select drop down, we have this inverse select, so I can go and select inverse, and now I have everything selected but the flower. So if I do a Control U to bring up my Hue and Saturation slider, again that's under Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and I just take the saturation slider and slide it all the way to the left, I've desaturated all my color. Right? We could do a Control or Command D to deselect, and that's it. So now instead of saving this as a Photoshop file, I think we're done for the purpose of this exercise. So I want to show you how to export from Photoshop into a manageable file with the resolution that's suitable for social media or for the internet. Here's how you do it. We're going to go to File, and instead of Save As, we're going to go to Export. Export, Save for Web. It'll automatically choose 72 dpi for you. Over here we have these presets. I wouldn't mess with this top one here, but the GIF option, we're going to select JPEG right here. And you can take your hand tool and move around and check the resolution of your picture to see if, when you change the compression ratio, if you see a visible change. Right now I'm at very high. If I go down to high, which is about 60% quality, do I see a difference between high and very high? I'm not really seeing a measurable difference, so I'm going to take the lower compression at 60. This should be good. We can see down here it says JPEG at 194 kilobytes, which is about the size of a smiling emoji that you text with your friend, so it's a good size. I'm going to hit Save, and we're going to save it where we can find it, and we can change the name to something more suitable, like your last name and Blue Flower. And there it is. And we're done with that. So I'm going to close this. Now when we're done, we're going to have 3 in-class homework files plus the 8 files that you have for Photoshop Tennis. All of those will be exported, and saved as a JPEG, and then we're going to combine all of them into one combo PDF. That one combo PDF is what you upload to Canvas. Now we're going to talk about this photo here. I'm going to do a Control Plus to zoom in. We have a low resolution black and white picture, and we're going to do the opposite. So before we were removing color, now we want to add some color. So I also want to show you some of the selection tools we have here. How do we select this skirt? If I were to do object selection, I don't think it's going to select the skirt. It's going to select her whole body. So I'm going to do Command or Control D for that. To select her skirt only, I'm going to grab this time her quick selection tool. And you'll notice that it gives me a brush that is the same brush that we use for our eraser or our paintbrush. And you can change the size here by clicking on the left and right brackets just to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. There are two vertical bracket keys that you can change your brush size. You can also go up here to this drop down where it has, you can change the size of your brush up here and take a look. But this is it's an extra step. If you don't want to take that extra step, be like the cool kids, you can use the brackets. Here we have this edge hardness slider. I want to keep this at 100%. I'll illustrate why later, but we want a cookie crisp, sharp edge on our brush, not a diffused airbrush edge. If we brought this hardness down to 0, then we'd have an airbrush. We want to go 100% edge hardness here. All right, so I'm going to shrink my brush size to something more manageable that will allow me to grab her skirt. You see the plus sign in the middle of this brush? That means if I click on one area, because there's a plus sign here, if I click again, I'm adding on to my selection. So I want to select her skirt only, and you see I've gotten some extra bits. I've gotten her leg here, I've gotten part of the building. I want to delete that. So do you remember that whole Shift and Option key if you have a Mac, or Shift and Alt if you have a PC, for getting that negative sign to appear in your brush? That we did this for the lasso tool when we were cutting out the hands of the model. So if you hold the Alt key down if you have a PC, or the Option key on a Mac, you'll see that your plus sign in that brush will turn into a minus sign. Once it's a minus sign, then we can remove some of these selections, like so. You see that? Ba-boom, ba-boom. Go away, building. Go away, little window. All right, so I've got just mostly her skirt here. I'm alternating between my Alt key and my Shift key. So we've got her skirt here, looking pretty good. Let's add some color to that. So it's Command or Control U for our Hue and Saturation. And now we have to hit this colorize button. If you don't hit this colorize button, look what happens when I saturate this. I get digital pizza. I mean, who doesn't like digital pizza? I don't like digital pizza. I like real pizza. So let's hit the colorize button right here. Ba-boom, colorize. And now we can saturate this, get it a nice deep color, and you can change the skirt to any color you want. And we have created a very romantic Valentine's Day card. Okay, when you're done with that, once you have the skirt, you're done. Let's go to Export, Save for Web again, right? And this is how we export for the internet or social media. I'm going to go over here. It remembered my last selection, which was JPEG. My quality was at high at 60%. Looks fine here. I see my picture is only 56 kilobytes. Very tiny. Good. Let's save this. We'll put our last name in front of it on black and white. All right. When you save your work, you're going to be paying attention to where you're saving your JPEGs, right? I usually like to put it into an image folder or homework folder or something like that, just to keep things straight. I'm going to close this tab because we don't need it anymore. I've already exported my JPEG, and we'll move on to the green silk area. Now I'm going to show you how to color replace this green silk here. Let me get this blue banana picture here. I'm going to copy this. We'll do a Control C or Control A to select all, Control C. I'm just grabbing this bowl of fruit here so I can paste the fruit picture in here. Let's change the size. We'll do a Control T to resize. And I want to sample the color with my eyedropper tool. We can sample any one of these colors here. If I sample this blue banana, I can use, if you do a long press on this tool, the brush tool, there's something called a color replacement tool. I'm going to leave my color mode onto color. Sometimes hue will give you good results too. Try color first, and keep your limits on contiguous here. And here's my brush size here. You use the same brush for your paintbrush, for your eraser, for color replacement. You can change the brush size by clicking on the bracket keys to the right and to the left of your keyboard here. You'll see me doing that. You see the plus sign here. That means every time we click on the artboard, we are adding something here. So let me choose a color with our eyedropper tool, color replacement tool. Now I'm going to change the color of my background silk and nothing is happening. Why is that? Because we don't have the background layer selected. I know it's locked, but we can still paint on it. You see here, I've changed the color from this green to this blue, right? You could also take your eyedropper tool and choose, like, say, an orange here, and then go back to your color replacement tool and change that. Now this only works if you have a color to start out with. If you find a swatch of white silk and you try to replace the color, nothing much is going to happen because there's no color to replace. So make sure you find a rich color. I'm going to show you how to cut out some shapes and replace the color and add some layer effects now. Alright, so we have here a butterfly silhouette. You could use any picture you want. It doesn't have to be strictly a silhouette. You could use an actual butterfly picture, but I'm going to use this one just to make our life easier. We're going to select this whole thing, Control A or Command A to select the whole image, and then I'll do a copy. I'll go back to my green silk and I will paste this butterfly on here. And we're going to use this butterfly shape as a stencil to cut out a shape of fabric here that has in the butterfly shape. So to get this stencil, I need to trace this. I'm going to use this new tool, this object selection tool, and I'm going to select this. Hey, what is this? Select subject. Let's try that. Ba-boom! Look at that. That's a new feature they've added. You can do it like that, or if you didn't update your Photoshop, you can just use object selection tool. Drag a box around it if you want more control. I'm not getting great results. Sometimes you have to try more than once. Twice. There, I got it right here. Either way, if I were to hide this layer now, how do I get this stencil out and how do I cut out this fabric? I'm going to hide this butterfly layer just to reveal the fact that I have a butterfly shaped selection here. Now I want to copy this out, but I can't because I have the wrong layer selected. So if I select the correct layer, my silk layer, and I were to grab my move tool here, you'll see I can move this shape out. But the problem is I didn't create a new layer. So if I want to add layer effects or do editing, it becomes complicated because there is no new layer. So I'm going to hit Control or Command Z to go back to normal. And I'm going to do a copy and paste this time. Now watch my layer panel when I do a copy and paste. Edit, copy, edit, paste. You see I have a new layer here. You can't see it, but if I grab it here, you see now you can see it. There it is. There actually was a layer. I'm going to do a Control T and resize this butterfly. This newer version of Photoshop, I don't have to hold the Shift key down to keep my proportions equal. Some older versions you have to hold the Shift key down, so make sure you figure out which version you have and keep your proportions. I'm going to copy and paste this butterfly here after I hit the check mark to accept this edit. We'll hold down my Alt key, Option key if you have a Mac, and we'll just drag out these new butterflies. You'll see now that I'm copying and pasting these, you'll see it is creating new layers here, which is what I want. Now my last butterfly went off the edge here. How do I grab all these at the same time? You see my background layer is locked. It makes it very handy. I can grab this move tool and I can drag a box around all these. It automatically selects all the layers here. I can move all these together, or I can do a Control or Command T and resize them together to make sure they all fit. And there's that. So now let's add some color here. So I want to grab this first butterfly and make sure I have the correct layer. I'm going to hide the layer to make sure I have the correct layer. And I'm going to add some color here. So you see I have this orange already pre-selected. So if I grab my color replace tool, this layer, okay, select the layer. There's one color, right? That orange. Let's grab our eyedropper tool and select this green for this apple and select our next layer. Color replacement tool, boom, right? Not the greatest fidelity, but it'll do for our purposes. It's because of the way the yellow and the green are interacting. We don't always get a great color replacement. I'll show you how to overcome this in about 5 minutes. All right, so let's grab a new color here. Orange, green, let's grab a red here. And then we'll select the next layer and we'll grab our color replacement tool. There's a red. It's kind of similar to that orange. Oh, I didn't do a blue yet. Let's grab the blue banana, and then we'll make sure you're on the right layer here. And then I've run out of colors here, orange. So if you grab this last layer, you know, if you want to run through some wet paint and hope nobody notices, you can do a hue and saturation, image, adjustment, hue and saturation, right? We don't have to hit the colorize button because it's not a black and white image. I can just crank my slider over and choose a new color, right? Let's choose like a oh yeah, so here we want a brighter yellow or green. We can just go over here, increase the intensity. We could approximate better the color that we want. That's fine. All right, so let's add some layer effects to these butterflies. I mean, in the real world, when we're doing Pantone codes and we want to match the exact color, we need to be exact. But for this homework, we'll let it go. I'm going to grab this first layer here, and to turn on the layer effects panel, you either have to double click on this empty space, which brings you up a general panel, or you can click on this drop down and bring up a particular layer effect like drop shadow. See, if I just double click over here, the layer panel will appear, but nothing is selected here. So if I were to click on drop shadow, you'll notice that I don't have any drop shadow properties over here. You have to click on the word here to get your drop shadow properties. Otherwise, if you just go down here and select drop shadow, then your properties will automatically show up. Here, so I have some drop shadow here. Here's the opacity. You can see a little preview of your drop shadow effect. This is the opacity, this is the distance of your shadow, this is the spread. I like keeping my spread low, my distance low, and my size higher to get this kind of offset blur back here. It just to create a little bit of distinction between our edges here. It doesn't have to be heavy, just enough to make this layer pop a little bit. Once you've chosen some properties here, if we click on the next layer and we go to the same thing, drop shadow, it will remember the settings that you chose and automatically apply them. Let's say you want to do some outer glow, right? If you click on another layer here, like this blue butterfly, and I select outer glow, click on the word here to get the green one, excuse me. Opacity here, see that? That's kind of obnoxious. We don't have to make it super obnoxious. Just we want to make sure we can see the a distinction between our edges and the background color. It can be real subtle. All right, so this one is, I think, this one right here. We'll add a layer effect. We can do outer glow or drop shadow, either one. This one too. Either one, outer glow, drop shadow. That's fine. Once we have those, we've added layer effects. We've added some color. Go ahead and export that. File, export, save for web. Keep our JPEG preset. Quality's at high. I think the image fidelity looks fine. Save it where we can find it. I talked about creating a homework folder earlier, and I did. So let's put our last name here. That's it. And we're done with that. We can make this go away. We can make this go away. And we'll talk about Photoshop Tennis. Before I talk about, we'll do a little bonus lecture if you want to hear it. Optional lecture part. But first, let's talk about Photoshop Tennis. You will find a partner. You will take turns creating, finding a background image. We're going to do it at 72 dpi for this exercise. It will help making high-res images easier to find since we're not going to be printing this out. The first thing you need to do with your partner is find a background image, or we're going to create a file. We'll go new. We'll go to web here. Instead of print, we'll go to web. And what web does is it automatically chooses 72 dpi, and that's fine. And then we want to go to the internet and find a high resolution, to find a picture that will fit here. So I've already done something like that. I found a background picture. We'll do a Control A, we'll do a Control C. Let's go ahead and put this onto our new artboard here. And it's a little bit big, so I'm going to resize this. All right, that's fine. And you'll start out with web resolution 72 dpi artboard. You put a background image. This one doesn't count. Now each of you are going to take turns adding 4 images, and once you add your image, you'll add a layer effect, and then you'll take turns, just like tennis. So one of you will go find an image. So let's say somebody was feeling goofy and they found like a picture of Godzilla. Any eagle-eyed people will notice that there's no background applied here. You can find images with no background on Google, or you can cut out your own background. So we've just cut out the middle step here. So here's the photograph here. I'm going to grab this object selection tool, and we don't actually need to do this, but I'm going to show you as if we were doing it. And then I'm going to do a Control C for copy, Control V for paste. He lost his toenails, but we'll let that go. So we'll put Godzilla here in the background, stomping on the field here. Okay, so we'll hit the check mark when we're done. We'll add a little bit of a layer effect. So you add one object, you add a layer effect like a drop shadow or something, right? Once you've done your first one, you will go and export and JPEG quality 60%. Yes, we'll save it. Save it into our file here, and we'll call this one your last name first, your partner last name second, and then tennis 1. That'll be the first picture. We're going to make 8 of these pictures. Then you can either, for some of you this may work, if you have your cloud set up, you can hit this little share button and you can invite somebody else to edit. Otherwise, you just email that JPEG to your friend back and forth, and you take turns editing that JPEG image. So another reason why we did 72 dpi, because it's easy to email. So once you've done this, now it's your partner's turn. So if you're sharing a computer, you'll stand up, your partner will sit down, and they will research and find a picture of, something. I'll do a object select here. We'll do a copy, and we'll go over here and we'll paste this guy on here. And now you'll notice I have a little bit of this shadow on the back of his head. I can grab my eraser tool here. And do you remember that I was talking to you about edge hardness? So if my edge hardness is at 100%, great, thank you. If my edge hardness is at 100%, and I have the beaver layer selected here, and I cut out something like this, I've cut out a perfect circle of his face, and it's like a nice crisp clean edge there. Now if I go up to my brush and turn this edge hardness to 0, and I click right there, it creates kind of like an airbrush effect. You see the difference between that? So for a lot of eraser purposes, you're going to keep your edge hardness at 100, and I will change the shape of my brush here, and then you can start to fine-tune your cuts if you want, but this is Photoshop Tennis in class work. It's not going to be super important that you get all the shadows shaved off of your picture here. So I'm going to do a Control T, and let's resize this person, and let's pretend like, let's go put him back here. Let's put him behind the Godzilla layer, and it looks like Godzilla sat down and got something stuck, or Godzilla ate him and he is impervious to gastric juice and then is emerging from the other side unscathed because he's special. All right, let's double click here and add a little bit of maybe, I don't know, outer glow. Poot. Okay, so when you have your second image and your layer effect, then you will export, save for web. We'll check out our compression, 60 JPEG. We'll hit save, and we will now, our first picture was your last name and your partner's last name, Tennis1. So now we can do partner last name, your last name, Tennis2. Aren't we making a combo PDF, Mr. Han? Why do we have to label all this? We got to label it so we can keep things straight. Come on, folks. Let's just practice exporting for web. It's a useful skill. All right, I'm going to close these because it's taking up memory on my computer, and I don't want my computer to crash. All right, and you're going to be doing this tennis back and forth, just like what I showed you. Each of you will cut out 4 images, add a layer effect, and then export it for web with your name first. you'll make 4, and then you'll make 1, and then your partner will make 1, and then you'll make 1, and then your partner, and then you'll do that 8 times. And then at the end you'll have 8 pictures plus the 3 we did in class that we just finished. All right, so that's it. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the Photoshop tools here that I talked about in Monday's lecture if you missed lecture. Now this is going to be, I think, probably the last time I'm going to post these videos because lecture is now mandatory, and come to lecture, take notes. So here's some of the other tools. We have our selection tools up here, which we've kind of seen. We also have over here a lot of photo editing tools, which is what Photoshop is famous for. For example, we have a young actress here. Over here, if you do a long press on this area, you see something here called a spot healing tool brush. Again, we can use our brush size here, and let's say there's a blemish here that it's an unwanted blemish on your photograph. You wanted to get rid of it. You just take this spot healing, spot healing. You get your brush size to be a little bit bigger than the dot you want to fix, and you click it, and the computer will just make it disappear. Why would you want to get rid of freckles? Keep your freckles. They're lovely. Well, let's say you got your ear piercing. You didn't want your parents to see it in your social media feed. You can go over here. What ear? I didn't get my ear pierced again, Dad. What are you talking about? Or what is that, a hickey over here? I don't know. Let's get rid of that. But it's gone. All right. So, but you got to be careful with this because you can get easily carried away. Like, what? I don't want this eyeball anymore. Oh my goodness. Oh my Jesus. Look at this. All right. So that's how you do that. All right. Let's close that picture. We also have we can do some other kinds of healing, like a healing tool brush right here. This is where you have like a sample of one texture and you want to replace another texture. So we have like a little bit of wrinkles here and we want to replace it maybe with some smoother skin. So I'm going to hold my Option key or Alt key to tell Photoshop where I want to focus. And then now when I go down here, it's going to be sampling the skin up there. You see this big craggly wrinkle right here? I can just, this wrinkle, boom, 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 it's gone, right? Sample this part of your skin over here, and then you can kind of, you can almost paint with these, look, I've taken years off. Let's sample some of his skin over here. We can remove those wrinkles. I've taken like 15 years off of him. All right, so enough of that, right? That's how that works. So Photoshop is really responsible for a whole lot of photo trickery that we see online. Every single fashion magazine out there is using the Liquify tool. So if we go to the filter here, there is something called Liquify. And Liquify uses a bunch of different tools here. There's one here called the pucker tool. And I'll change my brush size to something. And it pulls toward the center of your circle. So this penguin here is, a little concerned about its waistline. It wants to look svelte in its wedding photos here. So we'll just kind of pinch that in a little bit there. We'll do a little tummy tuck right here. Oh yeah, this penguin's looking swole here. Okay, so it also, you have this bloat tool, which does the opposite of the pucker tool. So, you have this penguin wants to a little bit of work done here, a little badonkadonk or whatever they call it. This penguin, wants to make sure, looking at this puffed up chest over here is like, I want to make my chest look a little bit bigger, so you can just add a little bit. So don't believe any of the pictures you see. You see how easy it is to just add a little bit or remove a little bit here. All right, so here we have a picture of a Rubik's Cube, this square right here. You see that? So we can see that this square is actually cut out from here. It's the same color. And this yellow one down here, I cut this one out, right? And I'm going to ask you, what color is this yellow square? It's yellow, right? What color is this brown one? It's brown. Now, what happens when I remove my photograph? You'll see a yellow square and a brown square, right? Oh my God. What? So your brain makes up color. Do you remember that blue and gold dress that everyone was yelling at each other about a few years ago? Where some people saw blue dress, some people saw yellow dress. Your brain knows what colors look like in sunlight and in shade, and it makes up a difference in your brain. So we see here a yellow because we know yellow in the dark looks like this and brown in the light looks like that, but actually they're the same color, right? Whoa. Okay, so that was that demo. I couldn't do that in class. Here's the other one, the blue banana. If anyone's seen a movie called Pretty Woman, there's a bar that the main character goes to a lot called the Blue Banana. And this is an industry joke in Hollywood. The very first time a color image was sent from the West Coast to the East Coast, one of the techs thought they'd be funny and played a practical joke and painted the banana yellow. So they hadn't ever seen color before, so they hadn't calibrated their hue, their saturation, their color levels. So it was just all a bunch of wires and dials back then. So the West Coast, they're like, calling the East Coast, did you get our picture? How's it look? And the East Coast is like, it looks great, but we need to make some adjustments. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, they're all laughing their butts off because they know what's going on. The East Coast people don't want to admit that they're doing something wrong. We must have a wire crossed somewhere. Why is the banana blue? So what they were doing was they were going into their hue and saturation here, and they were adjusting their hue slider here to make the banana yellow, right? So if you make your banana yellow, all the other fruit get out of whack, right? And then if you make all the other fruit, your orange, and your apple red and stuff, your banana becomes blue. So it was hours and hours on the East Coast. These people are pulling their hair out. They're like pulling wires out. They're trying to figure out, refusing to accept the fact that people on the West Coast are smarter, but it wasn't they were smarter. They were just more cruel, and they played a joke. See, hue saturation. There you go. In your life. All right, everyone. Have fun making Photoshop Tennis. Your lab instructor will go over all of this. We'll show you. There's examples in the folder of how we can add stuff to it. Go ahead. Have fun.